Another group with a violent end, the Branch Davidians. The Branch Davidians started as a movement within Seventh-day Adventism, but some of their teachings and practices led to the Seventh-day Adventists rejecting them and saying, you know, that's not what Adventism is all about, and so kind of, you know, distancing themselves from this. Eventually, leadership in a sizable portion of the Branch Davidians passes to a man named Vernon Howell, who will change his name to David Koresh. He joins the group after he had been excommunicated from the Seventh-day Adventists. He begins to really gain some followers, rise through the ranks, but a variety of accusations about the group start to be made, including that they're practicing polygamy, that the children are being abused, that they are stockpiling weapons, and so the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms begins to investigate. In 1992, they raided the compound of the Branch Davidians in Waco, Texas. There's an exchange of gunfire, and 4 of the agents died. Well, now the FBI gets involved because of the death of federal agents, and they put the compound in Waco under siege, and it's blockaded, in a sense, for 51 days. Eventually, the Attorney General at the time, Janet Reno, under the Bill Clinton administration, permits the FBI to go in. So they storm the compound. They break in through the walls with tanks. And in the midst of all this, a fire started, as you can see in this picture down in the lower right. Fire started. There's the exchange of gunfire. 76 people die. 20 of those were from gunshots. But you know, it's a very disturbing end for the Branch Davidians. And then the last group I want to talk about here, with as far as you know, these groups that meet violent ends, is Heaven's Gate. Heaven's Gate began in the 1970s with a belief that the planet Earth was soon to be recycled or destroyed. And the goal was to get off of Earth before that happened. And to get off of Earth, you had to hate Earth in order to leave. And so you kind of develop this mindset of hating the world. It continues on for a couple of decades, doesn't really ever grow that large. In 1997, though, the leader of the group, a man named Marshall Applewhite, becomes convinced that there is a UFO, a spaceship, trailing in the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet, which is coming close to the United States, or coming close to Earth, and so a lot of people are interested in seeing it and these things. But Heaven's Gate believes that this UFO is coming to take them away. And so Applewhite convinces the people that in order to board this spaceship and leave Earth, they have to give up their physical bodies so that their souls could board this spaceship. And so in March of 1997, 38 followers, and Applewhite, gave up their physical bodies by downing phenobarbital that had been mixed with applesauce or with pudding, washed that down with vodka, put bags over their heads. All of them, all 39, were later discovered wearing, as you can see in this, in the third picture there, black sweatpants and brand new black and white Nikes. And for several days in March of 1997, these shots were all over the news. You know, these bodies, you know, partially covered up with, you know, these black and white Nikes, right? And these black that they had gone out and bought to die in. You know, and another aspect of this that's really eerie as well is that the Heaven's Gate website is still active. Right? 1997, internet is still in its infancy. It's not widely used, but you know, the website from Heaven's Gate is still there. supposedly exactly like it was in 1997. I've been to the website, but I mean, I'm assuming from the things I've read that it is relatively unchanged. I mean, there's nothing really talking about things too much after 1997. So somebody, of course, is paying for the hosting or something. Somebody is allowing that to stay up. But really kind of weird postscript to an already disturbing situation. Let's turn to some other groups that are less extreme, still sometimes branded as cults, some of them, but certainly not any of this violence that we see here. Let's start with the Unification Movement. The Unification Movement was started by a man named Sun Myung Moon. He was born in 1920 in Korea. He would go on to proclaim, he kind of starts within Christianity, and Christianity in Korea at the time was often practiced in secret because of the communist government. But Moon begins to claim that he and his wife have been selected to be messiahs. And, in a Korea where there is a lot of expectation in the 20th century among Christians of the soon return of Jesus, here is this person claiming that Jesus came to him in a vision around 1935, and that he was to finish the work that Jesus had started. Right? That God's plan, the claim is, that God's plan wasn't for Jesus to die, and so his work was cut short. Work was left unfinished. This responsibility is passed to Moon in the 1930s, supposedly, and out of that, one of the key things that becomes a part of this growing movement is the unification principle. Essentially, the idea is that God created the universe to show true love, which grows through human family. But people tend to be selfish. And so what we had to do is, live for others. Now, and that in itself, of course, sounds okay. But again, we're talking about some of the other trappings that are a little problematic. Right? Moon claiming to be a Messiah. He also claimed to be the third Adam. Right? So there was God created Adam, and then Jesus is the second Adam, according to Paul. And so Moon is saying he's now the third Adam. The movement, as you might expect, has faced a lot of persecution for the first half of the 20th century in Korea, especially North Korea, which was persecuting all sorts of religious groups, not just the Unification Movement. Moon was arrested. At some points he was tortured, left for dead, arrested again, sentenced to hard labor, but eventually freed by American forces during some of the conflict in the 20th century with Korea. And so he leaves Korea to travel to the United States. In the United States, he would hold huge rallies, bringing in a lot of people together, and there's sizable growth that takes place proportionately of the group in the United States. But it starts gaining some negative attention. People that are joining are referred to as Moonies. So there's that humor or sarcasm that's attached to it. One rather interesting ritual of the group are these massive wedding ceremonies where thousands of people would be married at one time. I don't know if you can quite make it out on the picture, but you can definitely see in the first couple rows these people dressed as brides and grooms. Well, that goes the whole way back as far as you can see in the picture. And so, people would be brought together. And in most of these cases, it might be people that never had met before, and yet suddenly they're standing before Moon and his wife getting married. They were paired up by Moon. Now, sometimes some of those individuals here might have been people that were already married, and they're participating in this ceremony as a way to kind of rededicate their lives to the church's teaching. The group has had some influence, or Moon has had some influence, responsible for creating a variety of conferences, professional conferences, especially on religion. It owns several newspapers, including, I believe, the Washington Post. They own a university, the University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and Moon at various times has had access to presidents, largely because of his belief as him being a political prisoner who had withstood communist North Korea. Moon died in 2012. Since then, there's been kind of a question of succession. The idea was that it would pass on in his family line, but there were a couple of different sons, and so people weren't sure which son to follow. And then there's a daughter that's kind of mixed in there as well. And so there's been a lot, I don't know, I haven't read anything recently about any sort of stabilizing of the group after Moon's death. But that it will remain to be seen if this group will last into the subsequent generations. Another new religious movement that has become more and more popular in the latter part of the 20th century into the 21st is Baha'i. Baha'i comes out of Islam. Islam serves as the kind of foundation for it, but it's not a form of Islam. Right? So it starts within Islam, but most Muslims would not, a majority, I wouldn't think too many would actually kind of recognize Baha'i. And Baha'i would say it's distinct from Islam, but would make connection with Islam, but it wouldn't necessarily want to hold to being Islamic either. Anyway, so we talked about in Islam this 12th Imam in Shia Islam, who has supposedly gone into hiding in the 900s, and has been revealing guidance since then from hiding. Well, within Shia Islam, there was this notion that the 12th Imam makes his will known through these individuals called gates, or Babs, B-A-B. So there's this idea of using these people to communicate. To Shia Islam. Well, in 1844, there was a man named Ali Muhammad who claimed to be the Bab, and he does so at the Great Mosque in Mecca. And so this kind of causes a lot of problems, because the people that are supporting him believe that he is the Mahdi. He is this messianic type figure in Islam. They believe that he's a prophet of God. Muslims, on the other hand, people that aren't following the Bab, say Muhammad was the last prophet of God. You are not a prophet of God. So he's arrested. Violence erupts between the supporters and the detractors. Some claim as many as 22,000 people are killed in all of this. Ali Muhammad is eventually executed, but prior to his death, makes the claim that another prophet would come, that the people, his supporters, should follow. Eventually, it's identified that a man named Hussein Ali is this prophet. Now, there's a lot of difference and tension about that, but eventually, the group that becomes Baha'i settles on this man named Hussein Ali. He has the name Baha'u'llah, which means glory of God. And his followers become Baha'is, followers of Baha'u'llah. And so he kind of takes off over from where the Bab had left off. Now, again, it's not surprising that, even as this movement is becoming Baha'i, there's a lot of opposition from Muslims. Right? Muhammad was the last prophet of God for them. And there are no other prophets. To take this mantle is to commit blasphemy. Plus, they're kind of opposing Muslim leadership, and so Baha'is face persecution, exile. I believe Baha'u'llah eventually makes it to the United States, but there's this spread that takes place from the persecution. One of the things also that is different between Baha'i and Islam, and also different from other groups, is the way in which Baha'i is very eclectic in drawing together a variety of religious traditions. The claim is that there has been 9 different babs, 9 different gates to God, gateways to God. In some ways they are manifestations of God, but they are solely prophets. They are human. These individuals, these babs, spoke to their culture, so their message is situated in their culture, but have essentially said the same message no matter what time period they've been in. But Baha'i also has a notion of progressive revelation or evolution to it, in that each of these babs throughout time have offered more revelation or a greater message than the others, provide greater insight. So the 9 manifestations are Abraham, Krishna, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah. And so they're bringing together these different traditions, these different religious teachers, kind of creating a harmonious type of religion, right? So one of the goals is to create religious harmony. But they also would say that part of the problem is the followers of each of these individuals misunderstood, misinterpreted what those manifestations were saying, which is why it was necessary for subsequent individuals, subsequent babs, to return. For a while, leadership in Baha'i was based on appointed successors, and you appoint the leader to lead after your death. But today it's morphed into a representative government of several different levels. There's government, there's leaders by region, leaders by nation, leaders internationally. Baha'is are monotheistic. They only believe in one God, even though, of course, we would say, well, there's a lot of difference between Krishna and how Hindus talk about Krishna in the divine way versus how Abraham, Jesus, even Muhammad talked about God. But Baha'is are monotheistic. There's one creator. There's one God. He is unknowable. But He is made manifest through the prophets, who act as divine messengers. Other Baha'i principles include notions of unity, unity of humanity, all religions having the same foundation, unity of science and religion. They also encourage equality among the sexes. They also teach, however, that an individual must independently come to truth. And so there isn't a professional religious class, a clergy, right, or priests or preachers. There's not that kind of level within Baha'i. Everybody's kind of encouraged to come to truth by themselves, not through what others tell you. And so if somebody tells you something, you should investigate it for yourself. They also want to see a unity in language and government, right, thinking that this will bring peace. Some numbers are very important in Baha'i. 2 of them that are important are the number 9, suggesting unity and diversity because you have the 9 manifestations. There are 9 members of Baha'i on each of the different levels of government. Baha'i temples, like those pictured here, have 9 entrances into them. The number 19 is also important. The Baha'i calendar is 19 months of 19 days. And then there are a couple other days to equal 365. During that last month, that 19 month, people are encouraged to fast, very similar to the practice of Ramadan. Most Baha'is practice worship at home. You're expected to pray to God daily, be involved in frequent devotions. to gather with other Baha'is in your home, where there will be prayers, meditations, readings from a variety of scriptural traditions, the teachings of a variety of religious leaders. There is some worship that occurs at temples throughout the world. Those temples are 9-sided, many of them with domes. In temple worship, there's the similar types of things, devotional types of services, readings from scriptures of a variety of religions. There may be choir singing. Those would be unaccompanied or a cappella. There are about 5 million Baha'is in 230 countries around the world. So not a large group by some of our standards, when we think about the size of Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, Hinduism, but still a rather sizable group that is present in a wide variety of places.